Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's sales webinar on WeEstimate 201 Advanced Estimating Features. My name is Stephen Asti, and joining me today is Samantha Perry, who will be instructing us through. So, some of the main points we're going to cover today will be utilizing WeSuite folders to quote multi-system sales, manipulating gross profit margins within your estimates, how to create estimate options to include on proposals, create and present revisions, and then lastly, copy jobs for new systems. As always, we want to get the most out of your time today, so if you have any questions at any time throughout the webinar, don't be shy. Just go ahead and type them right into the chat, even if it's just because we've gone too fast, if you want to see or hear something again. We have a lot to get through, so let's jump right into it. Sam?
Awesome. Thank you, Steven. I am going to share my screen. All right, just let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, all set, Sam.
Okay. Great. Well, we are going to dive right into it today on kind of WeEstimate 201. For those of you who were with us last month, we went through kind of the WeEstimate 101 and focused on a lot of the basics and kind of dug into some other features that we could get to within an hour. I wanted to pick up from where we left off there and drill into some more advanced features and also a great opportunity to do a little Q&A at the end if you have any questions as we go, as well as if we have some time, just kind of overall questions that you might have about the workflow in WeEstimate. So I want to start with the first objective, which is the WeSuite folder levels. Um, all of the different users of the system might use this a little differently, and some of you might even have preset default folders. But one of the kind of keys to how to break out your job and how your proposal will eventually look, and could even impact how the job gets imported into an accounting system, is the different folder levels that we offer when creating a job. So here I have a job already created and I have two folders. They'll be listed in the project view. And again, if you're using Quote Anywhere, which is the mobile version of WeEstimate, you'll also see the same folders I am now if I were to open up this job number. Now within each folder, when I open it up, I can kind of drag and drop from the left side in parts, labor, packages, services, all into this folder. And so I can right click and I can rename these folders, and I can always add more folders as I go. Now, the right above the folders is a one, and when you hover over it, it tells me that this is the folder levels. So we can go to a level 2 or to a level 3. To save some time, I'm going to go straight to level 3, but you'll understand kind of what I mean when we go through this on how you could do a level 2. So the main objective is that as you are naming folders, if you were to do a level 2 or 3, it gives you kind of an extra layer to categorize your folders. So if in this case I'm quoting by system, but if I wanted to quote by floor and by system, that could be a level 2, or by system and by room, right? I could go the other way, right, where it's system and then the sub is floor. And then a level 3 is just giving you one more layer. So let's say I wanted to do a level 3. Now, it will warn you if you're doing this mid-project and not at the create new job screen, it will wipe your job clean because it has to reset the whole project for this new structure. So it does warn you by doing this, it's going to reset your whole job. So if you're okay with that, everything is going to go back to 0. Okay. That's also kind of a nice way to just clear your job if you want to. So you can clear it and can then come back to 1 if you want to do 1. Now with a level 3, I'm going to say we're going to do, building, A. And now you see I have a sub level under that, and we'll do, first floor. And because I did a level 3, I have one more sub level, and I'll say, access control system. Now the green folder, so the last folder in the grouping, is where you're going to drag and drop your parts. or labor and services. So just keep in mind the first 2 layers, or 1 layer if you're doing a level 2, is purely for organization and how you would like it to display in a document. You'll still add all of your items into the lowest level floor, or the lowest level of the folders. So we'll do a video system. And so let's say I'm just going to keep it where now I'm going to do, second floor. And this is going to be building 2. And that'll also have a first floor and a second floor. And then, access and video underneath that. Okay. So now you can see how I'm kind of nesting everything within the different categories. Now you can see how this can get very big if you are doing a level 3, but again, some teams are doing enormous projects, and this is a great way to organize that, even breaking it out by different sites. I would recommend that if you do this often, it might be good to save this as a template or make it your default. Default is system-wide, but you can create a job template. I often do that. Well, I'll have a bin that's just called templates with kind of template jobs underneath it. So I'll have J1, 2, 3, 4 of different templates, and you can always copy and paste from those bins into an active bin that you're using for a customer. That way you don't have to rebuild this each time. But again, you can see I can do this from scratch. So now if I were to kind of fold everything up, I see my building A and building 2 here. Right, so I'll name this building B and just keep it consistent for you guys here. So I'm just going to add some parts. So I'm going to take a camera and I'm going to drag and drop it into the video system. And I'm going to take some card readers and put it in Access. Now I won't go much further than this, but I do want to show you how this now will look on a document. Okay, so I have a little bit of parts in the first floor for Access and video. And let me do the Access control system and video for the second floor. Now, this is going to show another feature that I really wanted to highlight today. And you can see right here, I've made a mistake. I made it a second floor, not the third level. So that green folder is the indication you've done it correctly. So we need to open up second floor and do access control system here. And video system. Okay. All right. So now I have kind of my main building built out, right? I'm not going to do the whole thing for building B. But another nice feature for those of you that have asked in the past, you can copy the content of a folder in terms of parts onto other folders. So if I built out my whole first floor access control with all its parts and second floor is the same, I can literally drag and drop the first floor access control folder on top of the second floor access control folder. And when I let go, it's copying now the parts from that folder into the next folder. Now, I don't believe it's going to copy the individual labor categories. If you've added, it will copy labor from parts, anything associated with parts. Labor, recurring items, chargeable items, you will still have to add to each of these folders, but it will copy all of the material from one folder to another. So if I do the same thing, I'm going to take those devices from the video system in the first floor, copy and paste them over the second floor by dropping it on top of this folder. And now I've added those parts into both folders. So nice way to kind of fully build out the material in one folder and then kind of copy and paste over that. So when I see teams kind of quoting by door or by room, that can be very convenient. So now let's see how the proposal looks. I'm going to go and move to the document screen. And from here, I'm going to just pull up a template that I have. Now, I'll talk more about some of the document settings today, especially around revisions, quote packages, displaying options. But we usually will do a kind of deep dive into everything documents and how to design proposal templates, scope of work templates, and lots of other things. So definitely look out for that. But for now, I'm just going to use my existing template and generate just so we can see how this folder level thing looks. So let's just go straight to the job. Okay. So now I'm only displaying quantity and description of parts, hiding everything else and showing a grand total. But you can see that the headers of the folders will still show as a single row because you're putting all the parts and labor and services into that lowest level green folder. But the header of the bar will show the full kind of titling of the folder levels. So again, if we just did a level 2, you would see, only one dash between the first and the second folder. Okay, but again, really nice way to display on your proposal and internally categorize, where you want to allocate parts and labor. If I did folder level totals at this point, so if I did like folder level subtotal and regenerate, you'll get totals for each folder. I could also do that checkbox where it's total on folder header, which is another nice one where it shows right in the blue bar header. So let's see what both of those look like. And so now you see I have the header on each. And I bet you with my folder level subtotal, I might have a checkbox that's crossing wires here. But you could have, let me do system subtotal and see if that combination is going to be good on my demo here. And also all I've added is parts. So, okay. So yeah, I've only added parts here, but the folder level subtotal gives you basically this, but instead of at the grand total level, as well as at each folder. So play around with your document settings. That checkbox tree is fairly standard across the board for all of our users, but there are some customizations and some specialties per system. So good to familiarize yourself with that. And you can create templates. You can, design a template. I'm going to call it, my favorite display. And you'll be presented with all of the checkboxes that you can then save. So next time you come back, pull up that template and it'll auto check all the boxes in that way. The organization likely has the checkboxes defaulted. So even if you pick nothing, it will show, certain pages and certain pricing layout. But if you did want to customize your own personal templates, this is how you would do that. Okay, I will ask any questions so far just to put it out there, but if not, I will move on to our next objective. Okay, so I'm going to revert to a job without the folder levels just to keep it a little bit more simple. And so here's just another job I was working on. And I want to talk about the GP and adjust feature and the available option feature. So right off the bat, you might notice that these folders look different. One has a black question mark on it. The other is plain. Okay. This is indicating to me that we have set a folder as being optional. And so what I'll show you is we go right to the document here and generate it. And if I go right to the pricing, the folders that I've included in the sale show in the main part of the sale. And then the folders that are optional, in my case, are breaking out completely separately. I also don't have a hard page break here, so you might want to play with the way you're displaying pricing. If you do have a hard page break, you don't have to worry about that. I'll always just start at the next top of the next page. But it is automatically saying, hey, because you've indicated these are optional to the customer, it will have the kind of folders that are not optional as the main job, and then available options will have that black question mark indicative that they are something that they can opt into. If you have DocuSign, you can add even more layers to that where they could even initial to accept those options. So to do this is fairly easy. And actually, I think if anyone's ever wondered what this whole fourth quadrant is, this is all pertaining to that. So when I click all estimate items, it activates this top right quadrant that is the settings at the folder level, or you might hear us call it the folder summary. And so at the folder level, I can indicate whether a folder is an option or not, or whether it's included in the outright sale. I can also exclude it from the sale. Exclude will just turn it red. That way it's not, when I win the job, it's excluding that from being part of the outright sale, as well as any recurring dollars. But I don't want to delete the folder because I still want to have the history there that it was in the job and then I showed it to them. Outright puts it back as being the main part of the job. And if I hit print on document, that's what adds the black question mark to the folder where it's saying, don't include this in the outright sale portion of the job, but print it on the document as an option. So I'm going to keep that one not optional. I'll do outright sale, but let's add like another folder and call it, optional, service agreement or something like that. So now I've made another folder. I click all estimate items. I see all three folders here. I'm going to print that on document. And now that is also going to be an option. And so it will break out all, kind of as many optional folders as you want. Now, also at the folder level, I can set specific job type, system type. This is pretty unique to the WeSuite system as well as to some accounting systems. So for those of you that are using Sedona Office as an example, if you wanted to create one WeSuite project, but automatically break out into 3 different work orders in Sedona, because Sedona will only allow a single job type, system type per job. This will allow you to create one WeSuite job of 3 systems, and it'll automatically create 3 Sedona jobs. So many of you probably don't have to participate in that process, but those, on your team that are importing jobs over, or if you don't want to make multiple jobs, this is how you can do that. Okay. And also in this quadrant is you could reposition the folders. If you wanted this folder to show first and then this one to show second, this will allow you to do that by changing the positioning here. So you could reorder the way the folders are falling on the job. Okay, so I'm going to put a service agreement in this folder, and there should be a little bit of everything in these. I'm not going to do a fire inspection today. And let's see, first floor is good. This has no parts, so let me put in like the card reader. Okay, so before I go and generate the document, I want to put in just a little part and everything. So before I generate the document, I did want to talk about the GP and adjust feature. So this is a pretty powerful feature, and we touched on it a little bit in the last call, but you probably noticed that the fields here in the total toolbars are editable. Now, if you're not seeing this toolbar, you can right click in the toolbar kind of area at the top, and you can turn on and off the toolbars. You can drag them around and put them in an order that you like, and then that's saved for your user profile. The basics is they'll each have cost and sell, and if you have a certain my setting on, you can even hide costs because there are a few of you that are quoting with WeEstimate right in front of your customer. With the total estimate toolbar that will show the cost, sell, and overall margin of the job, you can see you can edit sell and margin. Now, if I said I just want this to be 60,000 flat and hit enter, it will pop up this adjustment window and ask you how do you want to adjust this delta. So you can set a default for yourself as a user. So in my settings, I defaulted always start with my advanced option choice, have it distribute amongst material, labor, and chargeable items, and put 85% of it towards labor. that's how I've defaulted my system to always start. And so again, I'll show you after this how you can default that. Otherwise, you also have the option to do an even adjustment, and it'll just evenly distribute amongst the items on the job. Or I can do a category adjustment and literally say how much money I want to go where. Now, just keep in mind, because it does come up, if you do an even adjustment or you do, the advanced adjustment, it's going to eat away or add kind of wherever it can. So if you do, you know, advanced and you're going to say, well, I want only, 2% of it to go to labor and you don't have a lot of parts, it might, things might go into the negative. So just keep in mind when you're doing this, kind of what margins you're already working with, because there is no revert back. You do kind of have a revert back when we get into quote packages and revisions, so I'll get to that soon. But just keep that in mind when you're doing this. So when I say okay, it's going to then do that distribution for me and get as close as it can to that number. Sometimes it's not to the penny if again, if the math isn't mathing there for you. So here I got 60,000 even, so I'm happy with that. Now, vice versa, I can just say I want to hit, a 35% margin, or if you go too low, I don't know if my user has settings on right now. Looks like I don't, but if I tried to go to 10% margin, it could pop and say, no, you can't do that. Or, okay, you can do that, but now you're going to need an approval by someone. So those are kind of other things that could happen when you're using this toolbar. Baked into the toolbar, you can drop down. This is, I don't know, it's not new, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, but for those of you who used it a long time, you can just, rather than entering in the numbers and hitting enter, you can drop this down, pick what you want, and then hit save, and it'll calculate that for you. Now, to set this for yourself permanently, tools, my settings, I went through this tab by tab on the last session, so I won't go through all of it, but in the estimate tab, you will have on the right-hand side of the screen your default GP and adjust. So this was mine, advanced, all 3 items, 85% labor, and I do require it to say, are you sure? And then anytime I do a job, that's the first thing that's going to pop up. Okay, so I do see a few questions coming in. Let's see. Anything, Stephen? I see you're answering those as we go through. Anything you think we should answer on the call live?
So the question really was pertaining to labor adjustment. Wayne wanted to know if we could adjust individual labor categories through that interface, or if we couldn't touch the labor cell or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
And I guess Sam, it might be a good idea just to go back to the GPM adjust tool and just kind of show me
Yeah,
the different
my thought
checkboxes and
would be, yeah, if I said don't touch labor at all, right? So I would use the advanced option and say only drop down my items for material and chargeable items, but you have to say do not put it, like, don't do anything to labor, is how you would do that.
And Sam, just sorry to piggyback off that. He wanted to know if we could do a specific category in labor. Is there the GPS adjust tool in labor? Like, if are we able to
So the
do?
GP and adjust in this way, no, that's going to be
Yeah.
overall to the categories, but if you don't want to use the toolbar, you always have in the grids below, if you can see the GPM column, you can edit it, row by row, or in the labor grid, I could go to my all estimate items, see, I have 500 hours of labor, and I can edit the GP to this, installation category labor 1, and not, touching my other categories. But if you wanted to do a specific category, you would have to do the adjustment within the grids below. Okay, great question. So, all right, so let's move on then to um, revisions, quote packages, and kind of keep piggybacking off this idea we had with the options and the GP and adjust. So if I go back to the document and I regenerate it, I should now see two options under my available options. Sorry, I have a long scope of work. So now I have option one and then option two. Okay, so those are showing. Now keep in mind the way you have the core checkboxes showing, which are everything under, equipment, labor, collapse these, equipment, labor, subs, chargeable items, wire, inspection, RMR, and freight. This whole core of how the items display on the job will be the same way the optional folders will display as well. A recent enhancement we did, it does take some programming, but if you wanted your optional folders to have their own, display for your main job, you want to show full line item and extended pricing, but for your optional folders, you only want to show grand total. Um, we can do that. Just it would take some programming to your document. Otherwise, any folders, optional or included, will display the same way based on this section of the checkbox tree. Um, Coming back to the quote, so again, now, I can see everything here. Now, if I'm happy with this and I'm ready to send it to the customer, I'm going to talk about quote packages, revisions, and, winning revisions and reverting back. So this quote package is in preparation, not sent. Every time you work on a quote and meaning like you're in the job screen and you're making changes, it's affecting whatever quote packages you have in this in preparation. So if you're the person that added a quote package and then added a quote package, I now have revisions 2, 3, and 4, but they're all in the not sent. And that means they're all being edited at the same time. There's no difference between the two of them because they're, or the three of them, because they're all part of the active quote. So sometimes I'll see the mistake on, someone will make a quote package, generate it, then they'll go to, save as PDF, export it, and send it. But they never actually sent the document in the software, and that's these three buttons: email, flag it as sent, or send it for e-signature. When you select one of these three buttons, it'll move the quote package from in preparation to sent. And that's what's actually solidifying this as a sent read-only version of the document. Because then the mistake would be made, oh, I went and exported that, but then now I come back and I changed the quantity from, 3 to 5. My price is going to go up now, $900, regenerate. I'm affecting all of these quote packages except this one because I've sent it. Now, that can be nice because now let's say I wanted to send revision 2, right? So revision 2 is now, let's change it, so revision 1 was sent at 58,000. Revision 2 is going to be 64,000. So I'm going to send that guy. And now, if you are someone who exports and PDFs it and sends it, just use the blue flag. That's just manually saying I've sent it. If you use the envelope or the e-sign button, the system will actually send it via email or via electronic signature. Now I have revision 3, and let's say I'm going to make this, I'm going to remove this part altogether. And now I have, a $55,000 version. So I'm going to send that. And then last, let's say we're still working on revision 4. So now I have revisions 1, 2, and 3 have all been sent, and revision 4 I'm still working on. So if I were to now close this job and come to the dashboard here, let's open up our job, and you'll see the active quote. So the level of the quote I'm in is at the 55,000. But all the quote packages I've sent, revision 1, 2, 3, and 4, are here under quote packages sent. And I can see when I sent them and how much they were for. If I open one of these, it's going to show me the job as it was at the time that it was sent. So it's a saved copy of the quote. Now I can't edit it because it's a revision, but it's an old revision, but I can see it. So if you wanted to, when I mentioned the GP adjust, there's no, undo. If you wanted to save a copy of the quote as it was, flag it as a sent package so that it saves, and then you can work on your quote. And what I'm about to show you is you could always revert back to a prior sent quote, and now it becomes active again. So I can go ahead and I can open up any of those versions. Now, any questions right now about creating quote packages or how these were all sent? Because that's probably one of the most important things. You really want to make sure that you're seeing, anything in preparation move down into sent when you're ready to really say that's sent. And the yellow star will show that it's the most active one that you sent, because you can always resend. I can resend a prior version. You don't have to make a whole new quote package for it. If someone said, can you resend me version 1? I can just resend that, and then the yellow star will move to there. Also, if I were to win the job, it's going to say, great, you're ready to win the job. Which version are you winning? And unless you've sent the quote package, it's going to just assume, oh, you're winning one of the 3 that you've sent. So here's revisions 1, 2, and 3. You see my 4th one I was working on isn't there. So really I should have sent that. This on the fly create document, that's the last resort if you are really just trying to create. It just saves the job and the pricing, but you're not making a proposal and a scope of work and all those other things. So you want to make sure that you cancel that. And if the one you're working on, revision 4, is the winner, send it and then flag that as the winning package. And again, I come back a year later, I could revert back and see, oh, these were the versions I sent before. I did offer them a service agreement last year. This is your save as, basically, for all your quotes. Now, if the customer comes back and says, well, I actually do want all those parts, let's go back to the $64,000 version, but I still want to make changes, I can say, okay, and make that the active quote that I'm working on. So when you right click that package, it's going to say, one of the choices is sync to workspace. And it's going to replace this level here with the 55,000 and the in negotiation icon. So when I sync it, I'm saying, are you sure you want to sync it? You're going to lose your active workspace. Yes. And now the $64,000 version of the quote replaces my active workspace, and I can keep working on the job as it was at that time. Now, where this can be really helpful is old jobs coming back to life, and the pricing may have changed, right? I have a sent quote package from 6 months ago, and now the customer is coming back and saying, hey, I'm still interested in that system. Can we revisit this quote? If you hadn't sent a quote package, I would do it right now. Then that way it's saved. Then you can come back, create a second quote package for that quote, and there's a nice button in the estimate called Get Latest Pricing, which is basically just a long way to say refresh my pricing. And that will then say, great, I'm going to refresh all the pricing of your parts on this job based on their current cost and margins and other things. So it will update that for you, and your price will go up or down, again, dependent on how old this pricing is. And then you may say to the customer, yep, the price has gone up. You're going to have, this is the new price. Or you might honor the prior price dependent on, what you guys are doing. So any questions? I know revisions, quote packages, syncing to workspace, it can be a lot, but really kind of the highlights. Always create a quote package, and if you've sent it, emailed it, you want to, have a copy of it, click one of these 3 buttons. The flag is sent is the easiest, just it flags it as sent, and you can always revert back. If you have a bunch of quotes in preparation, like I had before, they're not unique to one another. They're all being changed at the same time. So that's why sent is important. If you do want to revert back to a prior version on the dashboard, when you open up the bin, the job, it would show you all your prior sent quotes. You can resend those, like I had mentioned, or I can always revert back to one of those. And at the end of the day, I could always win one as well. Okay, cool. So, moving on to a few other things. Copying and pasting jobs, I did talk about it before, but it's always a good one to revisit. Um, if I wanted to copy this job and say I'm doing a similar project on my current bin, I can right click, hit copy, and then in the bin itself for jobs, right click and hit paste. That will add a J2 or 3 or 4 to the bin 22056. In the last 2 years or so, we've also added, do you want to copy the quote packages? So here you see revision 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's all the quote packages I sent. So I can even say which quote package I want to copy along with the contracts or proposals within it. I could say don't copy the documents. I just want to copy the parts and the pricing in the quote itself. So I say okay. And now I have that as a J2 in my bin.
And
If I
Sam, with
want to,
the
yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Sam. With the copying the document portion, does that copy over things like scope of work, cover letter, things like that were on the sent proposal?
Yes, it's going to copy the document in its entirety. So the checkbox selections, the scope of work, the pages, cover letter. So if most of you have your document automating, like fill in first name here, customer name here, you don't have to worry about that. But if you have written in your scope of work, we're going to install for ABC security, you might want to recheck some of those scopes of work. But it will copy everything. Okay, if I wanted to copy a job, but to create a new bin, so some of you are not using WeOpportunity, I would say if you're using WeOpportunity for your CRM, always have that be the start to create the new bin, which is the highest layer here. But if you're not doing that and you just want to create a new bin from a job, I can copy the job and instead paste on my proposals. And then when you do that, here I already have a job open, so I have to close it. But when I do that, copy, paste on my proposals, it's going to say, you want to copy the documents again? I'm going to say no. And now it's going to start a bin for me based on that job. And I'm going to have to, create the customer site and pick all the other drop downs. This way it's creating the J1. If you go and create the bin first and then copy and paste the job in, it's going to default as a J2, which is fine. Some people are pretty used to that, and J1 just gets archived and never used, and J2 just becomes the main job. But if you want to get around that, copy the job, paste it in my proposals, and have that be what creates the bin. Okay. Moving right along, another really nice out of the box feature is in engineering. So I'm going to open up this job, and when I go to the status tab, you might have noticed I've named mine in my system designer, but it'll probably say engineer for you. Now, this is a really nice out of the box feature. If someone in the system has been flagged as an engineer or their permissions to be an engineer, I can say, hey, I'm going to put this in engineering and I want Johnny Cash to look over my quote. Right? I built the quote, I want a second set of eyes on it, and I'm also going to say, hey, I need it by the end of the week. Save. Now it's going to say, hey, we're going to send this to engineering. It's read only. And now it's going to be Johnny who's going to get a notification that Samantha wants help with her quote. So I say yes. I can even put a note like, hey, drawings are in Dropbox or something. That's going to close. And you will also see a new icon on the job indicating that this is in an engineering status with this adorable little hard hat. Okay. So now I'm going to log off and I'm going to be Johnny. And as an engineer, I'm going to see estimates awaiting my engineering. and here's the job from Joe McCrane, job, J2, due Friday. And I can double click and open it, work on the job, make any changes that I think should be made, and then I can submit it back to Joe and he can kind of take it back from here. So back in progress, send it back to Joe, looks good, and we're done. Okay. Now, this is different than approvals because that's something that's kind of automated based on rules that you have set in the system. Some of you might, everything needs an approval. Some of you, it only needs an approval if it goes too high or too low. That gets audited. It goes through the levels of approval. But the in engineering is a nice way to just pass back and forth jobs to one another. Getting, it sends out a note, you get an email notification, and you're not sending it an email or over a Teams message or something like that. Any questions about that? Okay, great.
So, Sam, a question did come in. If you want to just go back to WeEstimate,
Yeah,
can you just show how to rename a job or a bit?
yeah. There's a few different layers of renaming. The bin itself, I can right click and I can rename. Now, by default in my system, when I hit a new project, I don't have, some of you have two layers, two name fields, project name and job name. Project is the bin, and then the job name is, of course, what you're going to name your job. Uh, sorry. Project name in my case is hidden, it's bin name. Project name is the job name. So when I name this security system, I see J1 as security system. My bin name is hidden because in my system I've defaulted it to just show the customer name automatically. But for those of you that do have two levels of naming, you'll have bin name, which is the 22056, and you'll have the job name, which is next to the J1 or the J2. At both of these layers, I can right click and I can rename it. So I can rename the bin, I can right click and rename the job, or there's even a third layer on the document where I could rename the title of the proposal, which in my system defaults to the job title. But if you wanted to put, some other title on the proposal that's unique to that's more unique than the job number, you could make a change to that there too. And if I could rename it here and I can rename it here. I will mention if you rename a job, so let's say I'm going to flag this as sent, and now I'm going to name another one. It does see it as being a unique version of the quote. So if I call this security, instead I call this, access and video system, it's going to stamp it revision 1 again. So just keep that in mind if you are renaming. Some people prefer to name it Rev 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can kind of ignore the auto stamped versioning number. Obviously, they are different documents, and you can see the last updated date and created date, so you aren't, so you know what was sent before or after. But just as a warning there, we'll restamp it revision 1 of this titled quote. Okay. All right, so a few other things I wanted to get into, specifically about some associated items and custom drop downs and things. Now, a lot of these things have to be set by your system admins, but I did want to go through this with this group because if you're using them and you see them in your system, great, now you can use them. And if you see good reason to use some of these features, you can bring it up the chain. But one of the first things, and I don't want to use this big job, I'm going to go to this one. One of the first things is associated parts and associated labor. So within the line item itself, when I add a part, let me add a new folder. Sorry, is this also level 3? I'm going to revert back to a level 1 and just clear my job. All right, clear. So we're going to call this exit now, video system. Okay, I'm gonna add a camera, and the one on the top of the list is the one I'm gonna add, and I want 12 of them. Now that part came in as well as its associated child parts. So 12 of the cameras came in, as well as 12 shock detectors and 12 power adapters. And if I scroll over, I also have labor coming in with the parts. So these can all be associations made in the system. Um, if you're pulling from an accounting system, often we can read labor units. So if you have 1 hour of labor or 15 minutes of labor at the part, as you add quantity, it'll auto calculate the labor. You would map it then to the different WeSuite categories of labor. So whether you wanted to apply to install one, install two, you can have as many categories as you want. And then the other thing you can do is in the system configuration is you can say every time I bring in this part, also bring in this part or these parts. It is something that has to be done, by a person in the kind of under the hood of the system. So there is some upkeep to it, so you might not want to do it for every single part, but things that you sell all the time, the bread and butter type things, or hey, this item always gets forgotten when this item is sold, is how you would do that. And so, tools, parts editor. I'm going to look up that camera. And now some of you probably may not have access to this area of the system, but this is where you would see your whole database of parts, add associated items, and now this part will always come with these parts. And then labor at the part level as well, I could say every time I add this part, bring in 2 hours of engineering and, half an hour of project management, let's say. Okay, and that can all be done here. Now you can always change it on the fly in the job if you have the permissions to, or I'm only selling parts and smarts, so I'm going to delete out the labor. Or here on the main row, I'm seeing installation labor, but if I hit this plus sign, I can see all my other labor categories. So I could say, well, also bring in, 2 hours of, insulation type 2 or something. And that's different than when you go to the labor tab. And again, I have everything in the kitchen sink turned on here, but your parts labor is its own column, which calculates off of the equipment. Whereas if you're using that or in conjunction with, or not at all, you could add labor here. So if you don't use part level labor, you could just hide this column and you're only going to add quantity here. But if you do, say 180 hours already came with the part, and I think I'm going to need 2 more days or something, and I can add more. So that's the associated labor, associated parts. You could even go as far as to say, well, every time you bring in this item, also bring in the RMR item that comes with it. Okay, so that could also be the case here. Every time this comes in, bring in its warranty and or something like that. So just little nifty features there. Okay. All the buttons along the left side here, I won't go through every single one, but they are pretty nice depending on certain scenarios. Box sale will tell you right here, if you copied a job and you just want to strip out any labor and recurring, it'll only keep the parts. RMR box sale does the opposite. So if you sold a job and then now later are selling the service agreement for that job and you want to calculate off of the that project and the material and labor that came with it, you can copy that job, hit RMR box sale, and it'll strip out the labor and material, and you'll be left with the RMR. Get latest pricing we talked about. If you're pulling from an old quote and you want to refresh pricing, you can click this, as well as if you're integrated with any of our other third-party pricing integrations like ADI or PSA. That will pull the price today at ADI or today from PSA, rather than whatever price you might be relying on in the WeSuite or the accounting system. And that is linked up to your company's profile in the ADI or PSA system. So it'll be at your discount level. And then some of these others are about adjusting price. If you got a good discount from a certain manufacturer, I can say take 10% off the cost for all, Bosch parts, right? Or for a specific folder. And again, you're applying that to just this job. Or I want to adjust all the items, all the parts in this folder to 20% margin rather than going row by row. It does require you to highlight the rows, kind of classic Excel, click the top or whichever row, and then hold shift and go down. And I want to change all these items from 35 margin to 28, and it'll just mass change that for me, and I don't have to go row by row. So it's kind of like a GP and adjust, but only with a set subsection of items. And then you have a few other things. For those of you who are manufacturers, selling down from from MSRP to cost, down from list, and then kind of a few others that aren't used super often. Filtering zero, there's even columns. I think I want to show this grid down below for those of you that are like, hey, I'm seeing way too many columns I don't care about, or I wish there was a way I could edit, this field. Those are all grid rights. Every grid at the bottom has its own menu of grids. So you could see I'm only seeing these 15, but there's 30 others I could turn on. So if I said, well, I never use device location, it's just taking up real estate on my screen, I don't want to see it, you can hide it at the user level. So you can hide columns, allow edit to columns, reorder columns. So for some of you might have used the system a long time and said, well, I can never see the GP percentage on the labor grid. It just means it's a grid right, and we just have to turn that on for you, and your system admins can do that for you pretty easily. And so the reason I went there is because there are columns for position, so I could reposition the parts. Like if I've added all my parts and now I forgot a widget and I want to bring it up higher in the list of parts I'm showing on the proposal, you can reorder them. And there's also a column called hide, in which case if that's on, so I'll save that for my guy here. If I have hide on, then I refresh, open my job again, and you'll have a hide column. And all that'll mean is then when you display on your proposal, you only want them to see the main equipment on the job, but not every little nut and bolt. I can hide certain parts so that when I display the proposal and hit show all of my equipment, it won't show the stuff that I've hidden, but it's of course still part of the total of the job. So at this point, I do want to open up for questions. We do have a little time. I mean, I'm happy to go through some other tips and tricks that I have. I have a few other things I could go through, but definitely want to answer anything you guys have. So I'll wait for that, but a few other things. I'm always asked about custom dropdowns, custom dates. These are very easy to do. We have our out-of-the-box dropdowns, of course, like job type, system type, market vertical, type of sale, a place to put in a PO number, a work order number. These fields could be reported on, they could be imported into another system, they could be displayed on your document. But if you ever thought to yourself, I wish there was a place I could indicate, or answer a question, there are 3 different options. You can create custom data lists. So, is this a franchise? Yes or no? What's the cable type? Who's the account manager? Are they prevailing wage? Right, and so you can create as within your own system any type of custom drop downs, and they could stay stored just here where I'm a tech or project manager. I come in and I can just see the answers to these questions, or I can put them on a job summary report, or import the data somewhere, or put it on a proposal. So there's drop downs. There's also custom dates. So what's the cancellation date? It's a year from now. What's the estimated completed date of the project? 90 days from today. What's the installation date? We're going to start end of the month. So again, there are important dates you care about, move-in date, cancellation date, put those here. And then the last option, called options, will really just give you checkboxes. Um, these can be good for yes, no, or I've seen them used as, hey, these are the things you're always going to have to do. Did you pull the credit? Yes. Did you submit for the permit? Yes. So this could just be a checklist of things to do, or again, it's just something that's yes, no, whereas with the drop down, you could have multiple choices. But these are all very easy to set up. You can do it yourself under tools, program options, appearances, and you want to create, a custom date, or I want to create a new custom dropdown. Those are all here, and I won't go into. I don't think we have time to go into everything, but if probably have a support article about it, and if you do want to learn more about how to set up those custom fields, let us know, and we can definitely help you. So, yeah, I don't see any other questions, and I'm pretty good in terms of scope here, so I'm happy to wrap up, and we'll talk to you next time. Steven, do you want to close us out?
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, Sam. One question did come through. I was just answering that really
Oh,
quick.
cool. No, if there's a
Uh,
question, happy to answer it unless you think you're good.
yeah. So a couple questions did come through, Sam. Just
Okay.
so if you wanted just to do that before we wrap up here,
Yeah.
one of the questions was, where can you add those tabs? So I think Dario had meant like when you're kind of going through
With the
the
data
dates and the
list, dates, and
options.
options.
Yeah. So you mind just showing those through program options, like where you can go to
Yeah,
customize those
so
and add those?
the tab will actually auto create as soon as you create your first item. So I already have them, but if I wanted to create, a new date and I want to call it, install date, I'm going to hit new custom date and I'm going to do move in date, right? You could even put a default value to say always make it, 5 days from the day the job is created or something like that, but I don't want to do that. Um, so 0, I think you have to put 0. That's why it was yelling at me. And now if I were to close this job and reopen it, I'm going to have a new move-in date here on dates. So as soon as you create your first one, then the tab will show up. So that's dates. For the other two, back to program options, if I go to appearances, estimate options, that was the checklist one. I want to do a new option called, let's see, submittals and drawings, and add it. And now that'll be a new choice on my list there. And then the drop downs is under item lists. Again, we have a lot that are already out of the box. But if you wanted to add a new one, you would hit this plus sign. And I'm going to add a new data list called builder type, or, builder name. Right, let's see, work with a lot of builders. And I'm going to say add. Now I have a new drop down called builder name. And then I'm going to add the items to it. So we're going to do, ABC Homes, and we'll make that the same. And, Valley, Pond Homes, and same thing. And now that would be, again, close the job, reopen the job, and I'll have a new drop down. And wait, I forgot something important. With the drop down list, you can actually indicate where you want it to show. So there's one more level to this. There's this icon here where it's an editor and where you want the drop downs to display. So I'm on builder name. I want builder name to show on the data list tab or the forecast tab, or I have to pick it when I create a new job. So you can do one or all three, but if I do forecast and data list, for example, and now I close and reopen again, I'm going to see it on both the forecast tab as a choice, or sorry, I think the status tab, and then I'll see it on the data list tab. So here's builder name. And then forecast, maybe not because I have weighted forecast on, but if you have standard forecast, then you would see it there. Okay. Um, and happy to answer any other questions. I do see people leaving as they need to leave, but if there are other questions, happy to stay on for a bit. Anything else, Stephen?
Uh, yep. So the last question I see that came through is there a, let's see here, is there a way to add the J number, so the job number, to the description when copying so we don't get confused when copying a job?
J number when copying. I don't think so unless you specifically renamed the project. It's just because when you copy it, you're just replacing it for another job number. Um, so it's not going to copy like this was J72 in a prior bin. It's now been copied and it has become J2 of another bin.
Yeah, you can manipulate the
But you
you can
can rename
manipulate
the
the
title.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can rename the title if you want to include
Okay.
like this was copied from J77.
Yeah. And I see the
Yeah.
last question about the engineering tab. If you are an engineer and you're not seeing estimates awaiting your engineering right on your dashboard, you would go to Tools, My Settings, and the dashboard tabs, the grid order, would say turn on quotes to engineer. If that's not on, you won't see the list of quotes awaiting your engineering. Whereas I believe Stephen estimates engineering status is I'm a salesperson wanting to see the
Correct. Yeah.
status of my jobs that engineers are working on.
Correct. Yeah. It would just depend on if you are the engineer or if you're the one that wants to send it over for engineering review.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, with that, I'll wrap up. Stephen will let us know what's up for next month, and thank you all for all your time.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thanks, Sam, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Really do appreciate it. The questions were fantastic. We always love the engagement there. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully you feel more comfortable with the second portion of WeEstimate, the WeEstimate 102. So if you need to refer back to this webinar at any given point, it's going to be emailed automatically to everybody attending. But if you ever need to reference back to it, you need to have that link again. It will be posted on our website under the Sales User webinar page. So mark your calendars for our next webinar that's upcoming here. On the admin side, we have DocuSign integration overview and features, and that's on May 14th. And on the sales user side, we have the WeSuite document editor creating stand-up proposals, and that's going to be on May 21st. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.